Today's format will be that Gertrude will present, and halfway after which she will be happy to take questions. So if you wouldn't mind putting your questions in the chat box, and she'll respond. So, and now I do have the greatest of pleasure to introduce Gertrude. It's a real honour to have you to address us today. Thank you. Gertrude is a mother of 3 adult children and a new recently arrived grandmother of a child here in Melbourne. She is a well-known African storyteller, a poet, an artist, an author, and an inspirational speaker who is passionate about helping people achieve their full potential. I could go on to read Gertrude's bio of her achievements, but it's huge. It's 3 pages long and filled with deeds of goodwill. I could start off by interviewing Gertrude to get to know the person. But before we get to know what she has accomplished, but it's evident that Gertrude walks her talk and lives an authentic role model of Ubuntu. So since you are a motivational speaker, Gertrude, I thought I'd invite you to share with us some of what you call has been a spirit-led life of Ubuntu. Over to you, Ubuntu. I will unmute. You need to unmute, please.
Okay, I forgot I was muted. Masikati maskwera sei. In my native language, that means good afternoon. How has been your day? Until I left Africa, I didn't quite understand Ubuntu from a Western perspective. It's a way of life. It's a way of being. It's tied into our language. It's tied into the way we relate to each other in community. And when I moved to London for the first time, I felt like a fish out of water because I had no sense of community. I was 19 years old. I had gone to London to get my first degree, and I would be at a train station or a bus station, and I would greet people and say, good morning. And they would look through me like I didn't exist. I lived in a society where people didn't look me in the eyes. And I would phone my mother in tears and tell her that I felt like I was disappearing. Now, the way I greeted you, if I was to greet you in the morning, I would say, Mangwanani mamukasei. And your response would be, Damuka kana mamukao. So Mangwanani mamukasei means good morning, how did you rise? And Damuka kana mamukao means I woke up well, if you woke up well. In the afternoon, it's masikati maskwera sei. The response is daskwera kana waskwerao. So good afternoon, how has been your day? The response is my day was good if your day was good. In the evening, it's maneru maskwera saying, good evening, how was the day? And the response is taskwera kana maskwerao. So we believe that if one of us is not okay, we're all not okay. So the word Ubuntu, Ubuntu, ngamuntu, ngabantu, when you literally translate that phrase, it means a person is only a person through other people. We believe that you don't exist without the other. We are reflections of each other. So if you don't see me, I'm not here. And if I don't see you, you're not here. They say that if a tree falls in a forest and nobody sees it, did it really fall? So it's in the observation of each other that we exist. In Zulu, in Ndebele, in Xhosa, we say sabona in the morning. And sabona means I see you. And it's not the seeing of sight. It's an acknowledgement of your humanity and mine. When I moved to New Zealand 21 years ago, I had no idea that this philosophy was going to take me all over the world. So I'll start off with my acknowledgement of the land I'm standing on right now. I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend the respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Peace. What does peace mean? Peace begins with me. For the world to experience peace, we have to go back into our own hearts. We have to be still, we have to be grounded and feel it within ourselves before it ripple effects across the world. So I'm really happy that we did acknowledge the war in Ukraine. I was going to ask for a moment of silence as well. So Ubuntu is the belief that we are defined by our compassion and kindness towards others. I found this little story online, and the story is of an anthropologist who proposed a game to a group of children in an African village. He put a basket full of fruit near a tree and told the kids that they would have to run, and the first one to get to the sweet fruit was the winner. When he told them to run, they all took each other's hands and they linked hands and they ran together. Then they sat together and they enjoyed the treat. When he asked them why they had run like that, one of them had all the fruit for himself. They said, Ubuntu, how can one of us be happy if all the other ones are sad? So Ubuntu in Xhosa means I am because you are. In certain regions of Southern Africa, when someone does something wrong, if somebody commits murder, instead of being punished, that person is taken to the center of the village and he's surrounded by his tribe for 2 days while they speak of all the good things that he has done. We believe that each person is good at their very core, yet sometimes we make mistakes, which is really a cry for help. We unite in this ritual to encourage that person to reconnect with his true nature. The belief is that unity and affirmation has more power to change behavior than shame and punishment. This is known as Ubuntu, humanity towards others. So when I moved to New Zealand, my first profession was in IT. I was a systems analyst, COBOL programmer, I was a web designer, and I came across the Ubuntu operating system. And a lot of people in the West think that the operating system is just an operating system. They don't realize that the operating system's principles are based on this ancient African philosophy. So I decided to reclaim the word, and I wrote a book called Born on the Continent Ubuntu. This book was a fundraiser. I moved to New Zealand 21 years ago in the middle of the AIDS pandemic. My grandmother had 11 children. She had 34 grandchildren. 19 of my first cousins died of HIV-related diseases, including my baby brother. There were 49 orphaned kids on my side of the family. Another 40 on my ex-husband's side. We were in a new country, we had no money, and family would send messages, they would call, they would ask for help, and I didn't know what to do. Then I learned about self-publishing, and I thought, what if I tell my story and package it as a book and just try and sell 100 copies of this book a month, send the money to Zimbabwe, help to pay for school fees, medication, and food. And the journey began. But I have to take you back a few years to when I was 17 years old, because that is really where my journey began. I had gone to visit my grandmother one day, and World Health flew into our village in a helicopter. It was an AIDS awareness campaign. They were dropping condoms and flyers to a population of people who could not read. I watched the parents running and catching these papers that flew out of this helicopter, looked at the cartoon characters, crunched up the papers. The next minute they were being used for their fires. I watched the children in our village blowing up the condoms and running around the village with balloons. And then they would run these workshops to try and explain what this virus was about. And they would take a broomstick and demonstrate that this is how you put on a condom. And they would put the condom on a broomstick. Every single hut in my community had a broomstick with a condom behind the door to prevent the spread of AIDS. So I plucked up the courage. I was 17 years old and I wrote to World Health and I said, I've just observed your campaign. It is totally ineffective. You've wasted thousands of dollars showering papers out of a helicopter. And I asked them to sponsor me to write a play because we pass down knowledge through our stories. I created an all-women's theater group because when I started explaining to my cousins, to my aunts, what this virus was about, they didn't understand because you couldn't see it, you couldn't touch it, you couldn't smell it. I realized that education is a basic human right. And my mission became a mission to empower and educate African women in particular, to help protect them from the spread of the HIV virus. After the play, which had an AIDS theme to it, the message was in the music, the community would bring drums, they would be part of the performance. We would run workshops in the vernacular languages and explain what a virus was. How do you explain what a virus is to somebody who's never gone to school? I found a way. My parents were market gardeners. I grew up around trees, fruit trees and vegetables and herbs. So I decided that I would buy apples at the beginning of the week. I did this part-time on a weekend. And when I ran the workshops, I would show up with a box of rotten apples that had decomposed during the week and a box of healthy apples. And I'd pull out the rotten apples and say, this is the human body. Something has gone inside this apple. It's eating away from the inside. It's going to decompose and die. And in the 80s, you could see the face of AIDS. You could see the lesions on people's faces, the thinning hair, the weight loss. It was very visible. I then moved from Africa, like I said, and came to New Zealand. But that seed was planted in my heart. A lot of people have asked me, Getrude, why do you keep going back? You're wealthy, you live in New Zealand, you don't need to go back to Africa. But Africa is in my soul. When we were designing this cover, I was 37 years old. This is me at 37. I'm 55 now. And And my husband took this picture, my ex-husband, and my older son said, Mom, I'll design the cover for you. And we slapped the picture on, the title, the name. And he spent hours looking at it and he kept saying, Mom, there's something missing. There's something missing. He was on the computer all night. And the next morning I woke up, he had printed out the concept of the cover and he gave it to me. When I first looked at it, I couldn't quite see the difference because it was just my face on the cover. And he said, Mom, hold it back. So when people buy my book, there's a very subtle watermark of the map of Africa on my face. And my son said, Mom, I feel as if Africa is tattooed on your soul. And this was the best way that I could demonstrate this. So I would sell 100 copies of my book every single month. I would send that money to Zimbabwe. I ended up taking up a little primary school where my ex-husband was born in his village in Shurugwi. For those of you who know Zimbabwe, it's in the Midlands district, right in the middle of the country. And I started helping all of the children. There were 350 kids in that school. I would raise money for school fees. I would raise money for medication and food. It turned into a foundation called Africa Thrive. Now, they say that a picture tells 1,000 words. And I'm going to show you a few of the pictures of this little school, what it looked like when I started, what I've done in the last 21 years. And I feel humbled that this project shows me, because sometimes we don't plan to do these kind of things. They fall into our hands for whatever reason, and we have to say yes to the calling. So this is Mazivisa Primary School in Shurugwi in Zimbabwe. It got really hard to fundraise. So I created a tourism business called Walk on the Wild Side Tours. The first 3 ladies who came were friends of mine. They were not wealthy. And I said, if I show you how to make $15,000 to come with me to Zimbabwe, would you come? They said, Getrude, we would love to. We know your project. Tell us what to do. And we created what was called the Africa Inspired Gala Dinner. And each of these ladies had to go and sell 100 tickets at $150 a ticket to generate $15,000. And I would show up as the gourmet chef for the night. So my mother used to have an African restaurant. I grew up cooking. I'm told I'm a good cook. And we raised $55,000 for that first trip between the 4 of us. This was the school when I started. In 2007, Zimbabwe had a drought. Then we had torrential rains. The whole of Southern Africa was flooded. And when I would visit the school, I noticed the children would all fall asleep as soon as they sat down. When I asked the principal what was going on, he said to me, Getrude, most kids are eating 2 or 3 times a week if they're lucky. There's no food. So we started a feeding program. When the feeding program started, all the villagers started sending the under 5-year-olds to the school. They started running out of food. How do you turn away an under 5-year-old child? So I started a preschool. So this was my preschool. We had no tables, we had no chairs, concrete floors. The rural schools in Zimbabwe are dilapidated. The Zimbabwean government has not touched the rural schools in 25 years. We had to rebuild toilets. We had diarrhea. There was no running water. The kids would come out of the toilet. They didn't wash their hands. These are the teachers' houses. And it was challenging to try and rebuild. We were trying to dig for water. This is the local community, the men who said, Getrude, we'll give it a try. Our water table is very low. We didn't hit water. This was a 2-year project with them trying to dig. And then a miracle happened. The ladies that I took on the first trip committed to coming back and helping me rebuild the school. We have gone back several times. We raised money and trained the community to make the bricks that we needed to rebuild the school. So we didn't get a contractor to come in. We gave people $50. They could make 5,000 bricks with 5 bags of cement. We bought back the bricks at 25 cents a piece, which meant they made $250. Now, the average person in my community exists on the equivalent of 30 US cents a month. Zimbabwe is a country without a currency. We're using US dollars. So unless you have children who live overseas, people are bartering for basic food commodities like sugar and salt. So this was my school. One of the ladies was an early childhood teacher. One was a social worker. One was a librarian. And they came back to New Zealand. This is my best friend, Lena. We've been friends for 21 years. She's the early childhood teacher. And she committed that she would come back to New Zealand, fundraise, and take over the primary school. The social worker trained all of the teachers to work with the children who were orphaned, trained them how to do tapping to relieve stress. We don't have counselors. These kids have no help when they have lost both mom and dad. They cope the best way they can. So we went back several times and we slowly rebuilt the school with the help of these 3 amazing women. This was the library. The books were dating back to 1967, the year that I was born. This is the state of most schools in Zimbabwe right now. So education breaks the cycle of poverty. I am passionate about educating as many African children as I can before I die. I then had the misfortune of going through a separation and a divorce. After 27 years of marriage, my life collapsed. I collapsed with congestive heart failure while on holiday in Bali, Indonesia in 2017. And it was when in my recovery from heart failure that I met my wonderful husband, Getrude Matshe-Kanicki, who is an angel walking this earth. He nursed me back to health. Dariusz is from Poland. And when we met, we discovered that we had lived parallel lives in 2 different parts of the world. He grew up in communist Poland. They had food shortages. Dariusz, as an 18-year-old, would get on a train and go to Germany to buy salt, sugar, fuel for his family. I used to get on a bus. I would go to Botswana or South Africa every weekend to buy things for my family, things to sell. And we connected on a very deep and spiritual level. So my life changed in 2007. My project continued as I traveled around the world. I started looking for orphanages when I started speaking as an international speaker. People started passing my name to events planners. And in every single country I've been, which is 56 countries in the last 21 years, I can't tell you how many villages, how many towns, how many cities in between. I would sponsor children in orphanages the best I can. This is an orphanage in Bulawayo. There was a gentleman who said he worked in Bulawayo. It's called Mustard Seed. All of the children in this orphanage are HIV positive. They have physical and mental disabilities as well. And we have been supporting them. They are run by a Catholic church. So that's another project that we sponsor. And this little baby that I was holding died 2 weeks after this particular trip. And I have kept her photograph on my desk because she is a reminder to me not to stop, to continue with this work and help one child at a time if I have to. So Mustard Seed is a very, very special place. They grow their own food. They keep chickens. They have vegetables. They have a vocational training center. So they train the women in the community to learn how to make candles and soap. And they are empowering so many people. So we now send the women from my village for training to Mustard Seed. And we're doing exactly what they've done. We have not put the children in orphanages. We find family members who can look after the kids, and we help with food, we help with school fees and medication. It is the traditional way that we looked after orphaned kids in the past. But when you have hundreds of children, families with 5, 6 kids, both mom and dad are dead, one person can't take them all in. So their kids get split up amongst family members. They end up as domestic servants. They don't go to school. Some kids are raped. They are abused. So we try and keep the children together. They've already lost their parents. And right now with this pandemic, we are in the middle of another crisis. People are selling their children because they can't feed them. Zimbabwe allows a girl of 13 to be married to a man of 65, 70 years old. Child marriage is a big problem. It is pedophilia that is wrapped around the name of marriage. And it is challenging to try and break the cycle of poverty in some of these communities. So we're working as hard as we can. So Mustard Seed has become the place that I send the women from my community. They grow everything that they need. They make the bricks. This is a vocational training center that they were building. It is now finished. I just haven't been home for a few years because of COVID. But as I have done my work, I have had people who have been put in my path to show me the way, to show me a smart way of doing things. They have a bakery, so they make bread and buns. It is just the most amazing place in Zimbabwe. So I collect wheelchairs for the disabled kids. I raise money for that as well. We look for mattresses because a lot of these kids are just sleeping on the floor. So I went to Bali, Indonesia in 2001, the year that I came to New Zealand. I was a keynote speaker at an event, and I had raised $1,000 through my Rotary Club to donate to an orphanage in Bali. I found them online, and on their website, they had a wish list of things they needed. But when I got to Indonesia, it felt like Zimbabwe. It felt very third world. And I thought, I don't want to waste money. I will go and talk to the nuns who ran the orphanage, find out exactly what they needed. And they said, how did you find us? I said, I went on your website. They said, Getrude, we don't have a website. It turned out an Australian woman had visited Bali. She had come back to Australia and she created the website for them, made them visible online. And she put a wish list of the things she thought they needed. And it was things like a TV, a DVD player. And I realized that I would have wasted thousands of dollars if I hadn't asked these nuns. They gave me their list. They were looking for sanitary pads for the girls. They needed sandals. They needed umbrellas because it was monsoon season. They needed pens and pencils. Very basic things, the kind of things that I normally would do for my kids in Africa. And as I was having breakfast, everybody knew I was the keynote speaker. I mentioned I was going to an orphanage and 5 people decided to come with me. Then somebody started passing a hat around the room. And as I am having breakfast, I raised another $2,500 US. So it was 3.5 US in the end. I tell people that money passes through me so I can make a difference in the world. I have a gift in storytelling when I share my stories. People can connect with me on a heart level. And so in every single country I've gone, this is what I've done. I help women get out of poverty with very small amounts of money. Like I can buy beads and give them my designs because I design African jewelry, I make African clothes, and I can gift a group of 100 women with $5,000 worth of beads. And then I take their beads to market. They take pictures wearing the beads. They record a story of who they are. And through my website, I share those stories. And instead of them getting paid $2, $3 in Africa, they end up getting anywhere from 250, 300 US dollars because people actually bid, they compete to buy that piece. So I've been stuck in Melbourne for the last 8 months. Like we mentioned earlier, I came because my daughter was about to have a baby. And I kept saying to her, there's another reason why the universe has me stuck here. I was on LinkedIn one day and I saw a competition. It was New Zealand, Australia Women in Technology Awards. And I had an idea to design an app to help the women in developing countries get access to the global marketplace. And I pitched my idea and I won the first prize of this competition. Now, imagine for a moment a woman in a village in Africa designs a tribal necklace, takes a picture, sends it through an app on her cell phone. So every village in Africa, everybody has a cell phone, but no access to the internet. We transact using our phones. When my parents were alive, I could go online, put money into their phone wallet, and they could go and buy groceries. They could pay for their electricity and water. So that woman will send us the picture through an app like WhatsApp. We expose that necklace to a database of designers in New York, fashion designers who are about to go on to New York Fashion Week. And that designer buys the necklace and the necklace ends up on the runway in New York. And that poor woman is paid what it's worth through the app, and the money is transmitted back onto her phone. So my app is called the Diversity Connector. And then the same woman is invited to give a lecture to a group of students who are studying sustainable fashion in a university in Paris. And she explains how she dyed this piece of bone by burning it and not using any chemicals. She talks about the natural dyes in her community. And students learn about sustainable fashion where they're not using chemicals. There's a lot of knowledge that can be learned from Indigenous people, but we don't get the opportunity to share this with the world. So this is what my app is about. I won the first prize of $20,000, and I've decided to make Melbourne my second home and build this business here. I'm working with some venture capitalists and angel investors who are helping me get this app to market. Now, there's 1 billion people on the African continent who all have a cell phone. Imagine if 1 billion people download my app for $1 a month, knowing that they can sell their product through this app and get access to the global marketplace. It's going to help us generate billions of dollars to start cooperatives for women in villages where they don't have any electricity, no running water. It's going to help us build clinics and hospitals, schools. That is the project that I'm actually working on right now as we speak. So when I was in Indonesia 21 years ago, the day that I was there, I decided to play with the kids. They didn't speak English. So I bought a piece of fabric, 10 meters of material, and I did a tie-dye workshop with these kids. We were on a stretch of lawn, and each child had to go and buy and get a stone or a rock and tie a bundle in this piece of fabric. And I would throw yellow dye and blue dye and it turned green. And I told them it was African magic. And for the whole afternoon, I mesmerized these little kids and we had the most amazing time. When I was leaving, I fell in love with this little boy. His name is Romero. He was the youngest. He was about 2.5 years old, and he would follow me everywhere. I was there for a week. The week that I was coming back to New Zealand, I decided to go back to this orphanage, and I had bought him a small little tricycle. I got to the gate of the orphanage, and he was about to go to kindergarten. He had his little backpack on, about to leave the orphanage. And he saw me in the taxi and he started screaming and he kept asking this question. He came to the door of the taxi, opened the door, grabbed my wrist, dragged me to the principal's office, and he made me sit down on a chair. And he jumped on my lap and he started touching my face and he kept asking the same question. And I said, Sister Teresa, what is he saying? And she said to me, Getrude, he's asking if you are real. She said, we get so many visitors who come to this orphanage, but nobody ever comes back in the same week. She said, when you came last week, it was like a dream. They'd never seen an African person. You had so much energy. It was so much fun. The kids have been talking about it the whole week. And he's just asking if you are a real person. And it taught me so much about orphaned children that if we are supporting orphanages, don't do it one-off. Commit to going back. Commit to one place and keep showing up year in, year out. Fortunately, he had been abandoned by his mother. When I went back, I heard that she came back for him. So he's reunited with his mom. I also met 4 little girls in this orphanage. They had turned 18. And the nun said to me, Gertrude, if we let them go, they'll end up in prostitution. We don't have money to send them to college. These are the 4 girls, this one, the one behind, and this one. So I came back to New Zealand. It cost $500 a year to send a girl to college in Indonesia. I raised the money through my Rotary Club. And I have this picture of me handing my business card to each of these little girls. And I said, I want to know what happens to you. I heard nothing for 9 years. In the 9th year, this little girl found me. She was now 28. She wrote me a letter on Facebook and said, Gertrude, you are my African mother. She said, the money that you paid for me to go to university, help me do a computer course because I want to be like you. She said, I managed to put 2 of my little brothers through university because of that gift. If you ever come back to Indonesia, you have a daughter here. So I go back and visit her every year. I run my writers' retreats in Indonesia. And I have children like this all over the world. This is our reunion 9 years later. And when I collapsed with heart failure in 2017, I went to Indonesia on holiday. I was working in the United States, lecturing in film at the University of New Mexico. I was about to turn 50, and I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro for my 50th birthday. And I would climb up in the mountains every single day to lose weight. I developed a headache and a dry cough that only came at night. I spent 6 months unable to lie flat. If I tried to lie flat at night, I would start coughing. And I'd go to this emergency center. They would give me cough mixture, headache medication, and send me home. I got progressively worse, and my kids insisted I come back to New Zealand to get proper health care. I listened. I went to see my sons in Auckland, came through Melbourne to visit my daughter. And my daughter Zianda said to me, Mom, you've been going full throttle since the divorce. You need to slow down. She said, I've bought you a vacation to Bali. You're going to be in a spa for 10 days. You'll get a massage every day. Please just don't go back straight away. I am grateful I listened, because on the 9th day is when I collapsed with congestive heart failure, walking in a rice field in northern part of Bali. I woke up 5 days later in intensive care. The day that I collapsed, I had hired a taxi driver to drive me around and do some sightseeing. Fortunately, I hired him for the whole week. Now, because of traffic, he couldn't come to the front of the hotel, so he was picking me up 3 blocks away. I didn't have any form of identification. I had just left the hotel with my phone, a bit of money, a bit of cash. No ID. He just knew my name was Getrude. When I collapsed in that rice field, this man did not wait for an ambulance. He put me on his shoulder and he drove me to the nearest private hospital. I would not be here if it wasn't for him. And I woke up and there he was, sitting at the foot of my bed like an angel. What I had done is, I know that people in Indonesia don't make a lot of money. So if I hire taxi drivers, I hire them for the week, I pay them an extra $20. He said, Gertrude, the extra $20 you gave me that week helped me pay for school fees for 2 years of my children's tuition. He said, I bought them shoes and I bought them backpacks. And he said, you're not alone. I am your brother. He would bring his family to visit me in the evening. And then he remembered that the day before I collapsed, I went and had lunch with Victoria. So he found her workplace. And he said, the woman I was with yesterday is in intensive care. I need to reconnect her with her family. And that one random act of kindness 21 years ago reconnected me with my kids, because I had taken the kids to Bali and they were connected with her on Facebook. Now, I could have died and had a pauper's burial in Indonesia. And my children would never have known what had happened to me. So that is the power of giving. I grew up in a village with no electricity, no running water. But I remember as a child, if my grandmother saw somebody walking past our hut, carrying a bag, looking like they're traveling and they're going a distance, she would call them into the house and she would give them the food that she had cooked for us. And we would go to sleep hungry. And she would say they need the food, they need the energy to walk to where they're going. We'll be fine, we'll eat tomorrow. I grew up in a society where people will give you the clothes on their backs when they have nothing at all. She would tell me that this universe is like a giant bank, that we have to keep depositing good deeds. She said, never expect anything back from the people you serve. It comes back tenfold in the most unexpected ways. And so my life plays out like a series of miracles. I meet people who are put in my path for a reason. The way I met all of you was through a young girl who I met on LinkedIn when I came to Melbourne. I decided to just connect with other African women in Melbourne and get a sense of community. She invited me to go to the house. While I was there, I saw a sign that they were looking for a volunteer to create a herb garden. And because I'm living in an apartment, I just wanted to go out and be in nature every day. So I volunteered to create this herb garden. And I was talking to Tanya the other day that I'm looking for a job. And there was a job on the website for initiatives of peace. So I went into the office and I said, I saw this vacancy. Is it still there? And they said, no, It's gone. We've already allocated that job to somebody. But yesterday, I got this miraculous text message from Margaret. And she said to me, "Good morning, Getrude. I've been thinking of a number of ways that we could utilize your talents and your skills, both in marketing, speaking, facilitating. For example, as a guest speaker, a paid facilitator. Let's set up a time to talk and explore. Let me know when you're coming in next week." I gave of my time because I had the time. I gave of my time because I was lonely. I gave of my time because I need to walk every day to keep my blood pressure under control and lose weight. I was helping me. I started volunteering for Sister Works. It's an organization here in Melbourne that helps refugee and immigrant women. I'm setting up a program as a business mentor. I'm recording a whole series of a video course for them so that their whole database can get access to everything I've learned. I'm sharing how I built a 4.5 million property investing business in New Zealand when I got there. I generated my business ironing people's clothes. I realized that everybody in New Zealand had washing machines and dryers, and in Africa, we have domestic servants. So when I was trying to raise a deposit to buy my first home, I put an ad in the local newspaper that goes into all of the households. And I just wrote that I will pick up your laundry, iron it, and bring it back. I was working full-time as a systems analyst. I had 3 children under the age of 12. And I would come home from work, get my kids to do their homework, feed them, put them to bed. I would go to sleep at 8:39, wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and start ironing. I raised $20,000 in 3 months and bought my first home 21 years ago. That first house went up in value by $100,000 in 1 year. And I used the equity of that first property to buy 14 properties in New Zealand. And I arrived in New Zealand with $500, no money. We didn't even have money for my ex-husband's air ticket. So I share everything I have learned because I believe that I already stand on the shoulders of giants. The shoulders I stand on are my parents. My dad got a scholarship in 1967, the year I was born, through the Catholic Church to go to London to study. He became a chartered accountant. He took his young wife with him. So I was left with my grandmother from the age of 9 months. And I lived with my grandmother until I was 4. Now, I am named after my grandmother, and I need to explain what my name means. So you might notice that my name is Getrude, not Gertrude. So when colonialists came to Africa, they would forcibly remove children from their parents, just like they did here in Australia. And they would throw these children in orphanages. My grandmother did not know her parents. She did not know her African name. And African names have a meaning. We are named around the circumstances of our birth. She said when she learned to read the English language, she dropped the R in Gertrude as an act of defiance to piss off the nuns. She said they would beat her until she was black and blue, and she refused to change it back. Now, if I put back the R in Gertrude, I kill my grandmother's story. I get to talk about her every single day. Her memory is alive in me because people want to know why I have a misspelled German name. So that's why I'm Getrude Matshe, not Gertrude. So it's in the naming of our children that we tell the stories. So my little grandson was born at a very sad time. I had lost my dad in 2018. I took Darius to meet my parents. My mother was very ill at the time. She had early Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And everybody thought my mother was going to die. And I said, Darius, I want you to meet my folks before they pass. And we went, we had a beautiful traditional African wedding. We celebrated with my parents. My mother was bedridden, she couldn't walk. And every day I would walk her down to the gate and back, and she was getting stronger. 3 weeks later, my mother could stand in the shower and wash herself. She could go to the toilet by herself. The week we were coming back to New Zealand, I said to Darius, I can't go back. I have a terrible gift. I am shown things that are coming, good or bad. I would wake up every morning with goosebumps all over my body. I would feel this chill, this coldness. I could feel death in our house. And those are the words I used. I said, Darius, I can't go back. I can feel death in the house. So he had to go back to New Zealand for work, and I stayed. 10 days later, my mother was ill again. I was rushing her to hospital. My dad had gone to church, and I called my father. I said, Dad, I've taken Mom to the hospital. Please follow. He said, I'm on my way. As my mother is being rushed into the emergency, my cell phone rang. There's a woman on my father's phone screaming, saying, whose phone is this? There's a man here who's collapsed. I lost my father that day. My dad died of a heart attack on the way to the hospital. And for 5 days, I couldn't tell my mother that my father was dead. She was in a critical condition herself. Darius came back, helped me bury my father. He came back to New Zealand for work. I stayed on for another few months. And then he flew me to Poland to meet his family. We were getting married. We postponed our wedding for a year because in Africa, when you're grieving, you put everything aside for a year. We had the most amazing wedding in Poland. We had planned a honeymoon in Santorini in Greece. When we were about to leave, he said to me, Getrude, I feel like I need to spend a bit of time with my mom. His mother was 92. She was the most amazing human being on this planet. She didn't speak a word of English, but she showed me love with no words. She would wake up every morning and make me breakfast, make me lunch. I would communicate with her through Google Translate. So we postponed our honeymoon. We spent our honeymoon sleeping on a couch in her tiny apartment in Poland. That was in August 2019. We came back to New Zealand. On the 23rd of March, 2020, Darius's brother called us on Zoom. He was alone trying to resuscitate his mom. She had a heart attack that morning. None of the neighbors would come and help because of COVID. For 17 hours, we were on Zoom with my brother-in-law, with his mother's body behind him. It was the saddest day of my life. It took 17 hours for the coroner to come and certify her dead and remove the body. 3 weeks later, my mother died in Zimbabwe. 2 months later, my daughter had a miscarriage. I don't know how I got through 2020. It was a very sad time. My daughter fortunately got pregnant straight away. And I started getting excited about the coming of this baby. But for 6 months, I was in a very dark place. The day of my mother's funeral, I was in a state of depression. I wanted to slash my wrists. I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted something in the world to change. And then I remembered a ritual. In Africa, when you lose someone close, you shave off all your hair to show that you are grieving. And I got out a shaver. I shaved off all my hair. When Darius woke up in the morning, he was lying next to a little bald woman who looked nothing like his wife. And we watched my mother being buried on Zoom. My brother Zoomed us in. My sister lives in Sydney. I have a brother in Canada. I'm in New Zealand. And my sister came online and she looked at me and she started laughing hysterically. And I said, Patricia, why are you laughing? It's Mom's funeral. She said, Gertrude, have you looked at yourself in the mirror? You look so much like Mom. It's so scary. Now, I look like my mother. People used to think we were sisters. She had me when she was 18 years old. I was a duplicate walking copy of my mom. 6 months later, I'm still depressed. I woke up in a dream. And in this dream, I was brushing my teeth in the morning. And then I looked up into the mirror, and the person looking back at me wasn't me. It was my mom. And she was laughing the same way my sister had laughed on the day of her funeral. And she said, do you see, baby? Do you see what I did? I made you look like me so that you will remember that I haven't gone anywhere. I am in you. I am with you. But you have to get up. She said, you have to get up and do your work. And I snapped out of a state of depression. I went back to my work. I went back to creating my women's speaking platform. I started connecting women through the internet. And we are scaling faster than I could have ever imagined. Women all over the world are seeking connection. So I bring women online to share their stories. We talk about business and entrepreneurship, health and wellness, family and relationships, creativity, social justice, and spirituality. I coach and mentor women who are grieving. I coach and mentor women who have been raped. And I tell them to tell their story from a position of strength and not to let what has happened define who they are. And make sure that that story becomes the light at the end of a tunnel for another woman who's going through a similar thing. We have created safe spaces for our stories to breathe and to be heard. We are 30,000 strong.
5 minutes, yes.
All right. We are 30,000 strong in 30 countries. And we are in the middle of a 31-day marathon. Every single day, I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm working on New Zealand time because people are awake in the US, in the UK, and women come and share their stories every single day. So we've got 465 speakers. So please find me on Facebook, on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel to listen to some of these stories. Share the stories through your networks, because I believe that we can change the world one story at a time, one person at a time. And I'm going to end my presentation with one last story, and it relates to the AIDS pandemic and what this pandemic has come to teach us. This is the first time in history that we are having a shared experience as human beings. When I moved to New Zealand 21 years ago, I would tell people a story of how I went to bury another one of my cousins the week before I left. A few days before I was leaving, I went back to the same graveyard. Another cousin had died, and I went with 2 bunches of flowers, and I wanted to leave flowers on the previous grave. And I had to walk 2 kilometers to find a grave from 2 weeks ago. It felt like we were in the middle of a war and there was no war. What everybody has seen with this pandemic, the mass burials, we lived through this 21 years ago. And when I told that story, people couldn't relate to what I was talking about. I could tell people's eyes glazing over like I was telling a fiction story. So this pandemic has come to give us a shared experience. Now, if humanity is one, if we are an organism, my grandmother used to say that if we are an organism and you cut your finger and you start to bleed, your white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it. If you look in a week's time, you can't even see the scar where you hurt yourself. That is how we should be reacting and responding to each other in the world. The world's problems are not as big as we make them out to be. If the 7 billion people on this planet heard that there is an earthquake in Haiti, and we each give $1, we can restore a country in a heartbeat, in a day.
Yep.
But we are living in a state of not enoughness and scarcity. We're living in a relationship of you and me and not we. So we are organisms. We are cells of the same organism. That's how we should be reacting to each other, like white blood cells do when we cut ourselves. So we are literally a breath away from affecting and infecting each other. If one person in the world is not okay right now, we're all not okay. That's what this pandemic has come to teach us. And the levels of empathy throughout the world that we are experiencing through this pandemic is another lesson we've come to learn. So the Chinese say that the word for crisis is written with 2 symbols. One stands for danger, the other stands for opportunity. So we have a dangerous opportunity to change our world and learn to do things differently. I'm encouraging people to smile at a stranger in a supermarket. You can make somebody's day with a smile. Talk to somebody in a supermarket, in a bus stop while you're waiting for the bus. People are lonely. People are feeling sad. When my mother died, I was in a supermarket buying vegetables. I was feeling really down that day. And this strange woman just came and said, "Hello, how are you?" And I had a breakdown buying vegetables in a supermarket. And she put her arms around me and just held me. We have to be there for each other right now. So I thank you for giving me this time to share Ubuntu through the sharing of my story. I would love us just to all reflect on what I've shared, ask questions, reflect back to me something new that you've learned, and enjoy the rest of today.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so very much. I have been captivated, and I just can't put into words. You are a light and a true example, a role model of Ubuntu. And thank you very much for showing us a real example of Ubuntu.
Yeah.
Can we invite, I will take you off spotlight maybe, and invite anybody would like to ask a question or make a comment.
This is Lucy. Could I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Hi, Getrude. I'm also in Rotary, and I'd like to know which Rotary Club you are in, and also the name of, I looked up Thrive Africa, or Africa Thrive, and there are several organizations that come up on the internet. So can you put in the chat room the best way to contact you?
Okay, I will. So I am the president-elect for Southwest USA. It's an electronic Rotary Club. It's online. I was a Wellingtonian Rotarian in Lower Hutt. But since I came to Australia, I couldn't attend any Rotary meetings, and I heard about this. And because I had attended their meetings in New Mexico, I joined them. And then they were looking for a president. So I'm the president-elect for 2023.
Oh, well, guess what? I'm a member of an e-club. In fact, my online club is the first e-club in Australia.
Okay.
So if you change to this hemisphere, you could consider joining ours. It's the e-club of Greater Sydney.
Fantastic. Wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
We brought down our website because we are remodeling it. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'll put my LinkedIn link. I'll put my Facebook link as well in the
Great.
chat. Thank
you.
you. Wonderful to meet you.
The first connection.
Yes.
After today. Anybody else?
Well, I have another question while people are thinking. So Gertrude, I help Congolese refugees in Australia to find resettlement in rural regional towns and find employment and so on.
Right.
The app that you're talking about, I could see would help not only our talented artisans who are refugees in Australia, but also my Congolese friends in DRC. So I'm really excited about your app. Do they just go, again, put that in the chat too, how people, the exact name of your app, so that I can share that information.
Okay, so to design an app, I need to raise about $1 million. So that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
That's why I'm staying in Melbourne. I'm getting investor ready to raise the money for the app. But what has also happened since I've been here through the sharing of my story, I met an Australian woman in Sydney who designed an app, and she has agreed to allow me to white label her app so I can get to market really quick. So that's going to happen in the next 2 months. In the meantime, I'll share a landing page where people can register. So we get their email addresses. In 2 months' time, when the app is ready, they get access to the app as well.
Great, thank you.
And I would love to work with anyone who's working with refugee communities, immigrant women, so they can get access to all of my coaching programs. So if any of you come across any groups of women, and it could be Australian women, I have another group of Australian women. Right now in Australia, the biggest number of women who are homeless are women over 50.
Yes.
Women who are going through divorces, separations, and they're being left without any money. So that is another vulnerable group that I'm working with. So if anybody is involved with those kind of projects, please get in touch with me.
Gertrude, is that the Diversity Connector app, or is that?
Yes, so it's going to be called the Diversity Connector. Yeah, that's the app.
Wonderful. Did anybody else have their hand up? Yes.
Ada.
Chisenga or Ada?
Ada has a question in the app. I mean, sorry, in the chat.
I can see that in the chat. So Ada's asking, is Zimbabwe moving back to Ubuntu since Robert Mugabe moved on?
Yes.
So Ubuntu was never lost, with or without him. Our communities exist this way. It's a way of life. It's not something you gain or lose. If anything, it gets stronger in times of poverty and hardship. However, since Robert Mugabe left, we are in a worse position than we were when he was alive. This new president is another dictator. He comes from my hometown. His nickname is the crocodile. He is brutal. He is vicious. Robert Mugabe was nothing compared to this man. So we are still in the same situation we were then. Things are not getting any better.
Yes, Jacinga, I think you had your hand up here.
Yes, I did. I had to take myself off video because I got something in my eye and I just kept on scratching. I didn't want to look like I was losing my sight. But I just want, it's more of a comment than a question. I think what Getrude has shared is very personal and very, not very easy. As someone who has experienced some of the things with HIV and all the, you know, the suffering of people, and it's just very raw, and it has just brought very raw emotions. And I feel very, I don't know, I feel very proud that I have somebody, you know, who has taken the initiative to do something in the capacity of what she's done. And I think I'm not too far behind where you are going. You have inspired me, and I will definitely connect with you. I don't have anything to ask at the moment, but I think we'll have lots of good chats when we sit down and have Nshima at some stage, or Ugali. I don't know if you remember Nshima or Ugali. We'll have some African food and have more conversations. There's plenty to do, and I'm looking forward to connect with you and chat some more. So thank you. Thank you for your courage.
Thank you, Singa.
Thank you.
Oh, my grandmother used to say that for a tree to survive, it has to scatter its seed as far away from it as possible. So we are Africa's seeds. We have been displaced through slavery. Some of us are economic refugees. We are dispersed in other parts of the world, but we are the help that Africa is waiting for. The children I talk about, I know them by name, and I'm sure you could count on one hand children from your village, from your community that you know that you could help. So my call to action is to people like us. We are privileged to be living in countries like Australia and New Zealand. We have to go back. I will never go back in person, but what I can do from where I'm sitting right now, I couldn't even feed my kids when I was in Zim. I couldn't even get a job. But I've done so much and with so little money. So I want to create a tribe of African women, warriors who are going to go back to their communities and make a difference. And I'd love you to be a part of that. And all of you are welcome. Africa is the cradle of humanity. It's home to all of us. Anybody's inspired to come on board and support us, please join us as well.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
Graham.
Yes, thank you, Gertrude. It was a privilege hearing your story. That mustard seed orphanage, it's interesting. I'm just now making contact with a lot of my former students in Bulawayo. Mind you, they're now about 50. The mustard seed orphanage, is that in Bulawayo?
It's in Bulawayo. When you're going to the airport,
Yep.
it's in that, just near the airport.
Okay. Okay.
And I can send you details. I'll look them up and send them. I'll actually create a flyer that I can send to everybody if you want to support.
That would be good. And do they have a website themselves?
I don't think so, no. But I have the phone numbers of the nuns that run the orphanage, so I can get people in contact. You can contact them through WhatsApp.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, yeah.
And can I just say thank you to you for coming to Zimbabwe as a teacher and educating Africa's children. I had an English teacher when I was 13. His name was Mr. Dave Davies. It was soon after Zimbabwean independence. I was in an all-white school. My sister and I were always the first 2 Black kids in every school I went to, and we experienced racism like you cannot believe.
Mm.
And Mr. Davies took us outside one day, and he made us lie down under a tree, and he read a poem by Wilfred Owen. It was First World War poetry we were studying. And he made us close our eyes, and I felt like he was painting pictures with words. And my poetry is influenced by Wilfred Owen because of Mr. Davies. I became a prolific writer. I would read books because none of the kids would play with me. And it turned into a career. I've written 8 books. But I always thank the teachers who've come to Africa to educate the kids. Thank you. And it's exciting to know your students are getting in touch with you as well.
Yeah, they still call me sir.
That's wonderful.
It goes back, yeah. Now look, being there was my privilege. Truly, yeah. It was a privilege being there. And I haven't been back to Zimbabwe, but it's never far from my thoughts. And yeah, one day, maybe sooner than later.
That would be awesome. I see Gloria has her hand up.
Yes, Gloria.
Oh, hello, Gertrude. I'm sorry my camera is not on, but I've listened to every word that you've said. It's just incredible, your story, and I know a little bit of it, but it's just really like kind of you to keep reaching out to people, considering everything that you have personally gone through. And I haven't got a question, but just to say, look after yourself and really take care of you, because some of the deaths that's happening in your family in a very short time, they are quite huge. And we want you here for another 50 or more years if we can. So please take care of yourself and reach out whatever you need. Some of the issues we are dealing with can be bigger than us. And I have shared with the group some of the colonial issues. And sometimes when we hear it, it looks like if one woman can do this, why can't other women do that? But we have got a system that continue to keep us down, continue even moving through the world as a Black woman isn't easy. So firstly, look after yourself and the beautiful family that you've been blessed with, and reach out like you're doing so that we can all, you know, help, that it's not just a burden on yourself and your family. And yeah, I just want to speak that in your life to really look after you.
Thank you, Gloria. Take that at heart. Thank you. I'll share with you, Graham, when you come with me to Zimbabwe, when the world opens up. So the company is called Walk on the Wild Side Tours. I'll show you a few pictures of why it's called Walk on the Wild Side. I discovered a lion conservation project up in Victoria Falls. Because of poaching, there's a farmer who started collecting these lion cubs, and they rear them in captivity. And to fundraise, they get people to walk in the bush with these lions. They hence Walk on the Wild Side Tours. So this is the first trip when I created Walk on the Wild Side Tours, the first ladies who came with me to the community. This is us just working with the teachers at the school, buying supplies. I think I showed some of these. One of the ladies, the social worker, because the kids didn't speak English, she got a whole lot of women in New Zealand to knit these little bunnies. And when she was teaching children emotional freedom techniques, the tapping to relieve stress, she would demonstrate on the little bunny. So I have all these women who knit for me in New Zealand. They make little beanies. In Shurugwi is near Gweru, and it's at quite high altitude. It's very, very cold in winter. We get below 0 temperatures in that part of Zim. So I'm always looking for woolen goods, little beanies and gloves for the children. We fly people through South Africa. We take you on a trip to meet Nelson Mandela now virtually. We go to his house in Soweto and we do a bit of South African history. I take you into all of the warehouses where we buy things and you see your money being spent. And then we go to this village for 10 days, no electricity, no running water, you eat the local food, and you get to experience what it is to be African for a few days. The last 5 days is 5-star. We go up to Vic Falls and we go bungee jumping off the Victoria Falls Bridge, whitewater rafting. I'm trying to find the Walk on the Wild Side tours pictures. Africa is so unique in that you can get so close to nature like nowhere else in the world. And I think that is the biggest gift that we can give back to the world as well, that people can get to experience nature like nowhere else. We do the game drives at day and at night, and it's a completely different experience going in the bush with these animals in the evening. Yeah, so Walk on the Wild Side tours is named after the experience you have when you come on this trip. Oh, I found the album. Here we go. So when you're walking, if the lions sit down, you can touch them, you can pet them, never in front, but from behind. There is a height restriction. If you're 1.4 meters tall, even if you're an adult, you can't walk with them. Children can't go on a walk with them because lions can sense vulnerability in small adults. They'll attack. Yeah, so we're all holding sticks to defend ourselves, but walking with us are a group of guides who have guns. It is the most humbling thing I've ever done. I will never do it again. It is scary.
Oh my gosh.
Good.
Then, of course, the elephants. This is my youngest son. He's now 24. This is my oldest son. He's now 32. It is an experience. And that's now walking with them at night. You can see how the reflection of their eyes.
Yeah.
They are majestic animals. But
I
just to
see.
get that close.
I
Ada
see
said
that
she's
Ada.
done that. Yeah.
That's
Ada
my
has done that.
daughter. This is the daughter who's just had the baby. She's now 32.
Gosh.
And my little grandson was named around the circumstances of his birth. I was supposed to name him and she kept saying, Mom, don't think of names before he's born. Let's wait for him. Let's see what he looks like first. And she named him Matida. And Matida means, God, you have blessed us. So he came at a time of great sadness. For me, the minute I held this little boy in my hands, he came with this energy that has healed my broken heart. I don't want to leave him. I want to be a hands-on grandmother. I'm going to find everything I can do to stay in Australia. But that's the Walk on the Wild Side tours. And it raises a lot of money for us in Zimbabwe. I think we have another question, or is that a comment?
Is there?
I don't know, is it?
Oh, Ada's saying, I did the Walking with the Lions experience in Big Falls. Okay, truly amazing. Also met the local people on a cruise. I've had great admiration for how they're managing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that, Ada.
Oh, wonderful.
You know, Gertrude, I'm not surprised that Marg has followed you up from your application because you know, IFC and Creators of Peace, you know, we run peace circles in 50 countries around the world, and in particular Africa. We run peace circles in Uganda, in Kenya. So So, you know,
Over the world.
we are,
Yeah.
yes. I'm sure we can find something we can work towards together.
Mm.
I really hope so.
That would be awesome. So my bio was incorrect. I actually have 6 children. So I have the 3 biological, and with Darius, we have another 3. So he has 2 girls and 1 boy. I have 2 boys and 1 girl. And I was sharing on LinkedIn the other day just how diverse our family is. I'm going to try and find the picture of the whole family so you can see what I mean. My oldest son is engaged to a Kiwi girl. My daughter is married to an Australian boy. My stepchildren are Polish, Austrian. Their mother is Austrian, their father is Polish. So we have a cocktail of nations in our family. We unfortunately haven't had an opportunity to get together in one space yet. So that's going to be
magic, won't it?
another day. And I had pulled out a video of our wedding in Poland. So we had an Afro-Polish wedding. Darius found a young woman in a village near where we had the wedding who is a drummer. So she hired us African drums.
Wow.
And I will show you that video quickly. It's just a minute or 2 long. And then I'll explain how I was dressed and the meaning of the way I dressed for the wedding. I wanted to be a queen for one day.
We're not seeing it. We're hearing it, but not seeing. I don't think we are anyway. I can
Only hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see what went wrong there. I think I know I didn't optimize something. Try it again. Share screen. The music did work, right?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Let
me know if you can see a screen with a castle.
Yes.
Yes.
That is where we got married. It's on the Czech Republic border of Poland and the Czech Republic.
Mm.
the body paint on my chest, I infused a lot of tribes in the way I painted myself. So on my arm, there is a geometric zigzag designs that represent the Great Zimbabwe Ruin designs. On my chest, I used the Aboriginal dots because I've been adopted by an Aboriginal tribe in Byron Bay. You'll notice on my hand, I had the koro for the Maori people. On my lips are the Nguni people of Southern Africa, and the dots around my eyes are representing Southern African tribes like the Ndebeles and the Zulus. So we had the most fascinating wedding. We had African drums. It was just beautiful to be able to find those drums in a village in Poland, of all places. And we danced tango every Wednesday. I miss the dancing, Darius. I need to come home.
Oh,
Very good.
what a beautiful way to end our afternoon.
Yes,
We have come to a time, unfortunately. Unless
Thank
someone
you.
else has a burning question. No?
so many.
Well, Gertrude, all I can say is we are all truly grateful, and we wish you well with your work, and we have learnt a lot, and we hope to follow in as your example. Thank you. You are a shining light. Bless you.
Thank
And
you.
I have one last thing to say. To install the Ubuntu operating system for humanity, put your family first, your community next. If you have something to spare, do something somewhere else in the world. Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
fantastic
you.
weekend.
God bless you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gertrude. That was astoundingly inspiring. Really appreciate it.
Was, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bless you. Have a good night. Be safe and well.
Good night.
God bless.
Thank you so much.
Nobody wants to go.
Don't want to go.
Nobody wants to go, do they?
I'm a bit stunned, actually, to be honest, you know.
so many experiences that
It's a beautiful
just flowed, positive and otherwise. She's just amazing.
Mm.